Hello everyone, hope you're keeping well, hope you're keeping safe, and hope you're keeping gamble free if that is your choice. Blimey, I've just noticed what a state I look. I really should actually start putting a bit more preparation into myself before these videos, at least do something with this mop of hair I've got. The problem is that I normally take a little break from work because I've been working from home throughout this pandemic thing. And I take a little break from working from home and I read some of your comments, I look at some of your questions, and that inspires me to sort of make a quick video just to sort of answer some of those. And yeah, I never really put an awful lot of time into it. So my apologies that these videos are very rarely polished, very rarely well presented, but hopefully the content makes up for it. That is, after all, the whole purpose, really. A bit of a different one today. Normally I have a lot of people ask me questions about quitting gambling, abstinence, different methods of staying away from gambling. But I do also get quite a lot of questions about gambling itself and about different types of gambling and what my opinions are on different forms of gambling. And I thought, well, people actually want me to sort of talk about this, and people do ask these questions, and I think it's only really nice, fair, and polite to actually reply to these. But obviously, what I'll do is I'll put a bit of a Phil twist on them. And so instead of saying, this is the best form of gambling, I will sort of just give my opinion on the different forms. So, what we'll say is if you think this is likely to be triggering, then obviously please stop this video now, and I will look forward to catching you on the next one. Now, it's my obligation really, as a recovering gambling addict, as a gambling addict, as someone who has gambling problems in the past, and who's someone who's kind of self-appointed role, I guess, is to try and help people with similar addictions, is to say that there is no safe, there is no good form of gambling. But that isn't to say that all gambling is bad under all circumstances. We have to remember that whilst gambling addiction is an increasingly large problem in the UK, and I'm sure worldwide, that there are people who can actually enjoy gambling sensibly, and who do actually manage to maintain control of their gambling. Obviously, if anyone is gambling regularly, they are at risk of developing this addiction. And if you think, the second you think that you are maybe gambling too much, or you find yourself spending more money than you can either afford, or that you really feel like you should be doing, then it might be good to sort of look and address the situation and actually think about, is this causing me a problem? The problem is that the expression we hear all the time is only gamble what you can afford to lose. And, this can be a little bit misleading, I think, because I have in the past gambled money I can afford to lose. If I got paid on a Friday, I could afford to lose a few £100 of that, because I know that's not going to affect my ability to pay my bills, pay my rent, buy food, whatever, for the month. So I can comfortably afford to lose that money. But it will have an impact on my lifestyle, because it means that for the next, few weeks or whatever, until I get paid again, there are things that I can't do. There are things that I'd maybe like to buy that I can't buy because I've spent the money gambling. So be careful with that. Careful with that expression. When they say only gamble money you can afford to lose, think of it as only gamble money that basically you won't notice the absence of. It's not a case of necessarily causing you massive problems in your life, but if it affects the lifestyle that you would rather live, then that is a reason to maybe not make that deposit. So the caveat to all of what I'm about to say is that basically, if you can live a life without gambling, unless you are able to control it to such a degree where it makes no impact on your finances whatsoever, and you actually get a positive outcome, a net positive experience from your gambling, then don't gamble at all. And let's face it, if you fall into that category of getting a net positive experience from your gambling, the chances are you're not watching my videos. So, with that said, a few people have asked me what are my opinions on FOBTs versus online casinos. What are my opinions of playing fruit machines in pubs compared to, the bookies or whatever. And, there are pitfalls of every single one of these. And so what I'll do is sort of cover off each in turn, explain my opinions about the particular games, and then give you my best advice on how to avoid playing these games, because ultimately that's what I'm here self-appointedly to try and do. Now we'll start with the most common one, which is FOBTs. Now I've spoken a lot about FOBTs in the past, often had sort of mixed responses, mixed opinions on them, but my personal opinion is that FOBTs are the worst. They are the worst form of gambling. They provide the high-stake gambles that you get sort of online or in bricks and mortar casinos, but they provide them at a lower RTP, particularly if we're talking about slots, at lower RTP. They are one of the most accessible forms of gambling, because let's face it, there are bookmakers everywhere. You don't need to really sign up, you don't need to register, you can literally walk in and you can start putting your money in these machines straight away. And you're getting, on the slot, somewhere between, I think, 84 and 86% RTP on games that you can play on £2 a spin. These are the worst of the worst. They have poor returns, they are dangerously accessible, and they are capped. The wins are obviously capped at £500. So whereas maybe online you might see some really exceptional wins, in a bookmakers you are very limited to the win you can achieve. I'm talking here, of course, about slots, but with the advent of the £2 maximum stake, I've never been a roulette player, as I've mentioned in my previous videos, but I can't imagine there's any appeal in bookmakers roulette anymore. I think if you find yourself playing bookmakers roulette, then I'd almost certainly suggest that it's time to maybe seek some help, seek some advice, or at least address your own personal situation. So FOBTs, I would say, even if you're a recreational gambler who can enjoy gambling, avoid them. They have nothing positive to add to the gambling experience. There's nothing fun about being in a bookmakers. They're horrible environments, normally full of desperate gamblers, and that I would have counted myself amongst those at one point. They're horrible, toxic environments. The stakes are high, the potential returns are relatively low, and the RTP is terrible. So avoid FOBTs at all costs. Now, when you compare that to the online casinos, now online casinos generally offer a similar type of experience. They offer the casino games, they offer the slots, but what they do offer above and beyond FOBTs is they offer a higher RTP. The average RTP on a slot game online is somewhere between 94 and 98%, giving you a much higher chance of winning. Of course, the odds are always in the favour of the casino, so you will always lose in the long term, and that's something worth bearing in mind. But the RTPs are higher. Also, the wins are uncapped, so you're not restricted to winning £500 or 250 times your stake. If you are someone who's still actively involved in gambling, or you're someone who watches streamers or videos on YouTube, you will see substantially higher wins proportionally than you ever could achieve on a FOBT. Now, the problem with online casinos is pure accessibility. If anything, they are more accessible than FOBTs, because whilst I'm speaking to you on my laptop now, I could quite easily close this window and I could go, well, actually I personally couldn't because of my blocks, but if I was anyone else without the blocks in place, I could close this window and I could go and click on a new tab and I could be gambling high stakes within minutes. So whilst they are, from a purely mathematical point of view, they are the most logical places in which to gamble from an RTP and from a player's return perspective, they are also one of the most dangerous. Above and beyond the accessibility, there's also the fact that you are very, very far distanced from the gambling experience, from actually the spending of money. In a bookies, by and large, you're putting cash into a FOBT. Maybe you're going to the counter and you're depositing over the counter. But either way, it requires a physical transaction and an actual physical spending of money, whether that be on a card or in cash. Online, it's very, very easy to quickly redeposit. Once your details are stored, it takes literally a few clicks and you can deposit hundreds after hundreds or thousands of pounds, whatever your budget allows. And it feels very, very detached from reality. Now, the positive side of online casinos in this respect is that actually it's very, very simple to block yourself from online casinos. If you go to a bookmakers, you can, as I said, exclude from individual bookmakers. There is also, which I'll put a link in the description, the multi-operator exclusion systems scheme, whatever they call it now, which is really, really helpful. But if you want to exclude online, thankfully, as dangerous as it is to actually have these accounts, it's just as simple to close them. Get yourself on GamStop. And that's it. Follow through the instructions on GamStop. It will take a little longer than it might to self-exclude from individual casinos, but it's a real safety net. What I'll say about GamStop very quickly while I'm on the subject. If you are considering GamStop, I have a close friend of mine who is signing up for GameStop as we speak. And I did say to him, I'm not going to discourage anyone from signing up for this scheme. But I did say to him, if you sign up to GameStop, you have to accept that that is it. You sign up to GameStop for 5 years, you will not be able to gamble online for 5 years. That means no online casinos, it means no sports betting, it means you can't do the lottery online. Anything gambling related, it will prevent you from doing, which is fantastic, it's powerful, and it wipes out a whole line of temptation in one hit. Any temptation that strikes you at home, you cannot act upon. But it is important to consider the magnitude of what you're doing in a sense. If you're someone who likes, who hates playing at online casinos, because you're losing all the time, it's causing you problems, but actually you like a sort of £5 acca on the football of the weekend, just be aware that that's not something you'll be able to do. Now, like I say, I don't want to discourage anyone from taking these positive steps, but do consider the magnitude of what you're signing up for. Do consider the implications, particularly if you're signing up for a long period of time, that will be the end of any form of online gambling for that period of time. But if you've chosen that route, then good luck to you. Proud of you in a way, and well done for making that decision. Now, if we look at other slots, we look at like fruit machines in pubs, which are increasingly becoming more FOBT-like, aren't they? And they're increasingly sort of replicating the games you'll find in the bookmakers and the games you'll find online. In the pubs, they are at a significantly lower RTP. You're talking high 70s, early 80%, and they are restricted. Although the stakes are restricted to a slightly lower £1 a spin, the payouts are restricted to a tiny 100 times your stake, £100. And those wins are even less achievable because of the lower return to player. If you play these games in pubs, you will lose 90% of the time. The odds are highly stacked against you. The games are very high turnover, but very low potential. And 9 out of 10 times you're going to lose quite quickly. The one thing I would say about playing in pubs, and this was always the problem for me, is that actually it's a scenario where you are more likely to be relaxed. You obviously have a couple of beers, and a lot of your resolve sometimes goes out the window, and so you might think a casual go cannot cause you any harm. The problem is now, the more aggressive these games get, the more random they get, the more they can take more and more of your money, and they can actually become a serious gambling tool. Whereas before, a fruit machine, particularly when they were 4, 6, 8, 10, 15, £25 jackpots, could only take a finite amount of your money, and because they were compensated games, you'd always get some element of return for your money. Now they're £1 a spin, £100 jackpot, high turnover games, and they are random. They are just as dangerous, I believe, as FOBTs. It might take you a little longer to lose, but you basically, your chances of winning are minute. What I would suggest in these instances is only take your cards to the pub. Don't take any cash to the pub. At the moment, thankfully, none of these machines are able to take card payments. I'm sure the industry is pushing for that to change, because contactless payment on these machines would be incredibly lucrative for them, I can imagine. But at the moment, you can only play these machines with cash, and particularly in the current times, I'm speaking now in July 2020, in the current times, most pubs won't accept cash as payment for drinks and for food, so they'll only accept cards. So there's absolutely no reason to be taking cash to pubs to put yourself at the risk of playing these machines. Another way I've spoken about before, if you want to limit your exposure to gambling on these machines in pubs, is to talk to people. If you regularly meet up with the same people in the pub, be them friends or just be them pub regulars. I live in a place where I moved to be with my wife, and I didn't know many people when I moved down here, so I started drinking in the local pub. I developed a group of, I would say, friends who I now regularly see when I go in there, so I've always got people to talk to, and I've spoken to these people about my gambling. They know about my gambling. Some of them know about this channel, and they know that I shouldn't be playing those machines. So that in itself is incentive enough for me to avoid them. I don't want to be the one who's caved. I don't want to be the guy who's gone back on his word and gone to play the machines when they know I've got a gambling problem, because that makes me look weak. And yes, I appreciate that gambling addiction is a weakness and it is something that affects us, but I don't want to appear like that in front of other people. So it's an added motivation to avoid it. I even spoke to my pub landlord and explained the situation. I've told him not to give me cash back under any circumstances. I haven't tested that, but I'm confident he would stick to that. If you want to make a bit more of a joke about it, just tell people that you know, tell everyone in the pub that you speak to that if they see you playing a machine, you'll buy their beer all evening. And trust me, if the shame isn't something to put you off, having to buy someone else's beer is, is enough maybe to put anyone off having that casual punt. So if you compare casinos, online casino slots, to FOBT slots, to slots in pubs, wildly different RTPs, wildly different caps on both stake and return. From a mathematical perspective, online casinos provide the best gambling experience. However, they also are one of the most dangerous because of the detachment, because of the availability, and because of the ease of increasing your stakes and depositing without the physical interaction of making a payment. However, thankfully, thanks to the likes of GamStop and self-exclusion schemes like it, they are one of the easiest ones to avoid. So if you have problems with online slots, GamStop. If you have problems with FOBTs, then National Exclusion Scheme, or go to individual bookmakers in your local area, ones that you're likely to walk to or travel to, and take some passport-sized photos, go in there, request a self-exclusion form and do it there and then. Pubs are a bit more tricky, like I say, because of the availability and because there is no exclusion scheme technically for pubs. But take your cards only. Don't get cash back. Speak to people. If you have to make a joke about it, if you have to make a bet about it, bet is the wrong word. You know what I mean? If you have to make a kind of an agreement about it that you'll buy them a pint if they see you playing the machines, then do that. Do what is necessary, but communication on those fronts is key. Thanks so much for all your questions. Sorry this is a bit of a long video. I hope it was somewhat interesting. I feel like I rambled a bit, but hopefully you'll find it interesting. Keep your questions coming. Keep your comments coming. Thank you to all my new subscribers. One thing I'll say before I go, if anyone is still listening, is that actually I've had a couple of people recently say, "Oh, can I donate to your channel? Have you got a Patreon?" And thank you so much. Thank you so much that you think that my ramblings are actually worth a donation or actually worth you giving something back. And I really, really appreciate the thought. There isn't. I don't have a Patreon. I don't accept donations. Primarily because that's not why I'm doing this. All I would say is if you do like the videos, if you do find them helpful, and you haven't already subscribed, I would really, really appreciate that. It goes a long way to help the reach of the channel. It goes a long way to see that I'm actually helping support people, and it's a good bit of positive feedback for me. I would also be lying if I said that when I get to 1,000 subscribers, there's a chance I might monetize the channel. As long as I don't get bombarded with gambling adverts, obviously then I'd have to stop that straight away. I wouldn't make any money out of it. I make very, very little out of money of it. I've not made a penny out of this channel so far, but it would be a little bit towards paying back my gambling debts. So the biggest favour you can do me, is like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment, because that gives me thoughtful things to think about, things to talk about in my next videos, and also it means that I get a bit of feedback that I'm helping people, and ultimately that's the aim of the channel, isn't it? So thanks again for watching. Thanks for sticking with the video if you've made it this far. Do appreciate you all, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers, guys.